So the wife and I were sitting at home the other day, and we were like, "What should we watch?" It's like times like, "What do you want to watch? What do you want to watch? I don't know. What do you want to watch?" Ah, ah, ah." You know how it goes when you're married. You're just like, "We got to watch something. It's nighttime. We gotta put something on the TV. We're we're not really TV gen. But, you like to watch something at night. It's a good unwinding thing to do. I'm talking like I'm like making fun of it, but I'm actually I think it's completely normal and fine and good to do that. But the other day we were I hadn't yet gotten around to. There's a couple. Look, I don't want to say how do I say this in as many words as possible. But there's some content out there which we just don't subscribe to on certain channels or streaming services. But nonetheless, never want to watch. And I don't want to even say I did. In the interim, since we put on this movie, kind of in a this movie, Jim and Andy, The Great Beyond, which we'll talk about in a second after my stupid preamble here. But we were wanting to watch the Yellow Jackets season 2. And lo and behold, I found a good way to watch that, which feels like less illegal than just going and torrenting the show. Um, but I'll leave that there. I did start Yellow Jackets, and since I watched this a couple nights ago, Jim and Andy: The Great Beyond, this documentary, interesting movie, flawed but fascinating in a way. We'll talk about it. But I have started the Yellow Jackets season 2, and pretty much is exactly how I would expect. It's not like I know that show is not very good. Like it's like great, but it's not good. Does that make sense? I don't know. I don't want to say too much about it. Anyway, let me pull up the Wikipedia page for Jim and Andy: The Great Beyond, because that's what we do here. I look at Wikipedia while I record, and that gives me some sort of a basis. This is a Netflix movie, and it was actually directed by Chris Smith, who is the director of what I think is the best documentary movie ever made. He directed American Movie, the 1999 documentary, and his other movies, which I've not seen, include The Yes Man, a narrative drama film called The Pool, which he wrote and directed. Another documentary called Collapse, which I have not seen, which is about Michael Rupert. No, I'm not sure about that at all. And then he did one of the Fire. He directed one of the two Fire Festival documentaries. I think he directed the one that was just called Fire, the Fire Fest. Remember those came out like the same week. Those two, and I reviewed both of them. So I've reviewed Fire and then this movie. And he also was I think he was the head showrunner or one of the main producers of the Tiger King movies, which is one of those things I vowed never to watch. So, nevertheless, and he also did Bad Vegan. About it was just like told the story of a vegan restaurateur who illegally transferred money to her husband so he could pay a deity to bestow immortality upon them. Which I did that when I saw Bad Vegan. I think I've seen that flicking around Netflix. And I always assumed it was like some sort of food show about how like maybe veganism is bad for you. And I didn't know it was like a dramatic docu series like about a specific story like that. So my interest is a bit a little interested in that. He also did one more thing to mention. He did a 7 episode series that he directed every episode of, called 100 Foot Wave, and about a surfer trying to ride a, guess what, 100 foot wave. It's right there in the title. And so like yeah, he's bounced around. I mean, there's a weird uh, cross section, And this movie is like an American movie is so good and unique, and it captures a life and a guy in a town and a moment in such a way that is like so wonderfully real and beautiful. And then I'm just comparing to like Firefest, which was just like a stock documentary, talking heads, and then this movie, which is unique in so much as the premise is unique, and it's basically back and forth between archival footage of Jim Carrey shooting the what was it, Man on the Moon biopic directed by Milos Forman, where he portrayed Andy Kaufman, and Jim Carrey in 2017 with his crazy beard acting like a crazy person. And this footage is fascinating because I guess it had been known that he was like he did like a method acting thing when he made that movie, and he took it to like the nth degree, to the point where it was like unsettling and weird. And what was interesting about this um, documentary is that it only allows it only allows Jim Carrey's point of view in the present. He's the only one interviewed in the present. So it's just him talking about the experience, and then us seeing the experience from behind the scenes, and then also clips from the movie itself, as well as clips of Carrey's career. So it works both as this specific story of the filming and the process behind making the Man on the Moon movie, as well as just a documentary on Jim Carrey, the person who came from Canada and kind of made a name for himself. And he's, you can say what you want about him, whether he's full of shit or he's kind of like a blowhard narcissist, or you can go any which way. I think people's perception of him will be different on case by case basis. I don't even know where I land on it, to be honest. But I do think whether I land on if I understand him, I'm not sure if I understand him any more than I did before. Too much, to even to the point that how much do I even care to know him? I don't really. So it's kind of like, it's also, I'm saying that as sort of tongue in cheek. Like I'm not like that interested in the cult of personality behind people who are artists or actors or any musician or any kind of field of the arts. Most of the time, there's a few exceptions when I'm really into someone and I feel like it's their story is fascinating. But I mean, Jim Carrey's story seems pretty normal. I mean, he's this talented comedian from Canada, and he kind of makes his way up in the ranks through a failed SNL audition, which leads to, of course, Living Color, and then the insane run of movies in the '90s. When I was a high school, when I was in like junior high and high school, or middle school and high school, and it's crazy to me that Ace Ventura, The Mask, and Dumb and Dumber all came out in the same year, 1994. That is like a single year run, $107 million for Ace Ventura. The Mask, which I think is the worst of the three, made $350 million. And Dumb and Dumber made $250 million. So they're all like massive hits. And then, of course, we go on to do, Cable Guy, and his progressed into kind of, between the Cable Guy and the Truman Show, he kind of starts to take on more, I wouldn't even say the Cable Guy's serious role, but it's like a little bit more of that's like a black comedy, and so he's playing like a little more nuanced character. And then he gets to Man on the Moon, and he goes whole hog into this method acting when he was not really, I don't even think you could say he was a guy. How could he? He probably was never method acted before this, I don't think. And he's got a really fat, he kind of goes off a cliff on some level. His career. After to late '90s on. I mean, Eternal Sunshine even is one that I rewatched not too long ago. I reviewed it, and it was a movie that I thought was spotty. It wasn't as good as I remembered it. It was still pretty solid, but I feel like he's overacting in that was like something I couldn't really get a handle on. And since like the 2000s, the last, Jesus Christ, 15 to 20 years, he's been in so few films of note. The Sonic the Hedgehog movies as the villain have been like these two, like and I think I've heard him say that that's going to be his last role, which is just insane to me, because he seemed like somebody who would transition to like be making more interesting movies, a la like Adam Sandler, who still does his comedies, but then he still he just works with the Safdies, and he made Hustle. So he's done like these other types of stuff, and he's constantly working, it seems like. But Carrey just seems like he's done for some reason. And so the interviews with him are, they're loose and they're kind of raw. But there's nothing to rein him in also. So he sort of just feels like he's sort of talking out of his ass for some of it. He's a guy who believes in like magical thinking. He was just like, because he tells a story about the $10 million check that he wrote to himself, and the idea that like he's just like, one day I willed all my entire career, I just willed it to happen, which is like, I always, when people who truly believe in that, it seems like I guess if you did have some like major success in your life, like it'd be easy to say, oh yeah, it's because I dreamt it and it happened, like, but it's sort of like anyone could say that, I think, right? I don't know. I'm always a bit like suspicious of people who like lean into that way of thinking, because it negates what are clearly, if you just even as like someone who's not involved in the story can kind of pull back the onion and look at it, like there's certain convergences of luck, or not even luck, but just good timing, and these things. These are not necessarily magical things. They're just like events that kind of transpire and they happen to happen, and it's just I don't know. And his like insane antics, and like on the set, like it's just this very weird kind of mid period. If you look at just his film, I know it's early in his career, just like in terms of the year wise, but if it's just like his overall output of stuff, like the Man on the Moon is like right in the middle of like all like his total quantity of things that he's made, and it's like a really, and I think it's a good movie. And I have not seen Man on the Moon itself proper in a long time. I probably saw it once or twice around when it came out, and I liked it. And I'm not even a huge Andy Kaufman fan. Like I appreciate Andy Kaufman for like what he's done, but I like he wasn't my era. So what I know about him is like more or less from the Man on the Moon movie, which I also wanted to mention. That movie itself is such a weird biopic in that it's almost entirely made up of, I mean, not entirely, I mean, it's probably 60, 70%. Like, they just recreated stuff that we have visual evidence of. Like, they just painstakingly got the original actors from Taxi to be on set to like recreate scenes from Taxi, then to like recreate that moment on David Letterman's show. His like it's so much of that movie is just like a recreation of things we already know. We already know what it looks like, and it's like, but trying to make it exactly how it was. Um, so a really weird process went into that movie. Just before you factor in the weird Carrie kind of method acting stuff, like that movie itself, just the way the script is written is kind of just like fascinating in that it leans so hard and so heavy onto like just the recreation of stuff we already know what it looks like and how it is, like and just him doing an impression essentially. And like he interacted as Andy with like Andy's family members, and it just all this that stuff was just was bizarre and like almost cringy and hard to watch, because it was like, what is he really talking to, like Andy's brother and Andy's like as Andy, and they're like kind of like into it, and the stuff with the wrestler, I can't remember his name. Um, oh shit, what the fuck's that guy's name? Jerry Lawler, who seems like I don't know. He's like the way he, because like they during this method thing, that this is sort of the big kind of like takeaway from this, was like the way he harassed this guy in real life as Andy would on TV. And some of these behind the scenes videos, like they speak to Lawler, and he's like, Andy never acted like that with me in real life. Like we had like we're good working relationship. We knew it was an act. We were like in on it. The joke, we were in on it. It wasn't just like there was nothing real about it. That was the whole point. So him to then act as Andy, it's like a flawed method. Like he's not even, if he was truly trying to be Andy, he would approach Jerry Lawler behind the scenes, not in the character that Andy was. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, totally fucking weird. And then the Tony Clifton stuff, and how they like did this they like trick people at the Playboy Mansion in what, while they're filming the movie, is, that's like its own little thing where it's just sort of like, I don't know, nothing about that, that character is like not that funny to me. I don't know, it's just a weird, very strange, just the whole process. The movie is like a little, again, not allowing it to be this kind of Jim Carrey show. I don't know if it necessarily made for a better movie in terms of talking about the process that went into making Man on the Moon. Like it felt like it was just this very singular look into one person's take on it, and that person turned out, is the person who was like forcing all the action in the first place. So it's a weird, it creates kind of a weird disconnect with the audience. But again, there's still some interesting stuff in here, and it's not all bad. I'll give it like a low 7. All right. I'm not sure when this was coming out. Again, I watched this one on a whim, so I'm going to stack it on some Friday at some point later on. and Phil on Friday. So enjoy it when it comes out.